football talk, and we're so happy to have our next guest. He is a homegrown Atlanta sports writer, a former beat writer for the Atlanta Falcons. You may recognize him as a co-host for Believe in Falcons with Ovi McGelly, formerly the host there, currently the senior editor and staff writer for the Atlanta Falcons, now making his all-access football debut. Will McFadden joining the show. What's happening, Will?
What's up, Rick? Thanks for having me on. Yeah, that was quite the laundry list. I didn't realize I had accomplished so much in the last couple of years. So you did a much better job reading that off than I would. I appreciate you having me on. Man.
Nice and crispy here on this Friday bye week edition. We pulled you out of the bye week to give us a Atlanta Falcons update and kind of gauge the temperature with what's going on with the Falcons down there in Atlanta, because I really felt like this was going to be a competitive team, a possible playoff team. We've seen some ups, we've seen some downs. I guess the big storyline coming into the season was the shift over to Michael Penix, now the full-time starter, taking over for Kirk Cousins, his first true offseason with the training camp under his belt. What's it been like? Give us a little Michael Penix report card. Has he played up to or below expectations? What do you think?
Yeah, Rick, I think maybe the best place to start is just the last two games for Michael Penix. And because in that, I think we saw a little bit of a microcosm of what I expected his season to be, which is against Washington, you kind of saw the ceiling, right? It over 300 yards, plus 75% completion percentage, made some really big throws in that game. But then you rewind the tape to Carolina a couple of weeks ago, and he looked rushed. He looked like he wasn't trusting what he was seeing. We know there were communication issues with kind of the offensive execution part of it. They made the adjustments to bring Zach Robinson, the offensive coordinator, down to the sideline to just kind of be closer to the action. I think we saw that pay off. So at this point in time, if I was going to give him like a grade or anything, it might be like a B, right? Because this is what I personally expected, which was just maybe the roller coaster of a young quarterback. And especially early on in the season, now this being the bye week, it kind of comes at a great time for Atlanta. A lot of people, when you initially got the schedule and it was like, wow, week 5 bye, if they're going to be in the playoffs, that would be great to have in week 10, 11, 12. But I looked at kind of the number of changes, especially a big change at quarterback, and said, if there's anything you want to tweak, you get the chance to do it early on in the season, and they are getting the chance to do that now. So I would expect that this last game against Washington is a little bit of a stepping stone for Michael Penix. I think it unlocks some of the things for this offense. And so if he's able to continue to play the way that he did last week, I really do think Atlanta's offense will quickly kind of move up in the rankings and kind of be around maybe that top 12 area, because I think that's their potential. Right now, though, the inconsistencies have kind of held them back in a couple of areas.
Yeah, good point. Bye week, make some adjustments, and that's interesting. So he calling plays up in the booth, and they brought him back down to the sideline.
Yeah, he has been ever since he came here last year. So that was the case with Kirk. That was the case with the first 3 games of Michael Penix. But it makes sense to have a young player. There's just so much stuff that goes on throughout a game, right? Yeah. And being able to kind of get in there right over your shoulder, be like, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's this, here's that. I'm going to go down and talk to Michael Petrie, the running backs coach, real quick. We're going to get a solution. So there's just so much that you can do when you're not up in the booth, even though I think the booth allows for more of a vantage point for strategy and X's and O's. And personally, that's where I might want to be, right?
Yeah.
But there's the player management part of it as well. And I think we definitely saw the benefits of that Sunday.
All right. Interesting stuff here. Will McFadden, senior editor and writer from Atlanta Falcons Media. And, the big knock on Penix coming out was the durability, right? Because he had so many injury woes, especially early on in his Indiana career. But we haven't seen that. He's been pretty sturdy and durable. And that brings me to my next question, I guess. You look around the NFL landscape, so many teams are down their starting quarterback, and teams like Cincinnati come to mind. And is there any chance that Kirk Cousins is shipped before the trade deadline, or is Cousins here to stay, or what would you say is the future of one Kirk Cousins?
Well, I mean, it kind of has been just like an offseason of leverage. It feels like, if you're the Atlanta Falcons, if you're Kirk Cousins, if you're other teams in the league, when the season immediately wrapped up and it was pretty much made clear at the postseason press conference, Michael Penix is our quarterback moving forward. And then the natural question was like, well, where does that leave things with Kirk, right? And then you kind of saw this offseason of, all right, who has the leverage, who's making the decisions, where's the pressure, things like that. And once it kind of became clear that the Falcons weren't getting maybe the offers that they wanted to before the draft for Kirk and having those negotiations, they were like, look, he is a former Pro Bowl. He was playing at an MVP level before he got hurt, before he came here in Atlanta. There is still a ton of value to, again, a young quarterback, to a kind of a new offense, to have this kind of insight in the room. The Falcons have a lot of former quarterbacks on their staff, TJ Yates, Zach Robinson himself, now Kirk Cousins. Like, that's a lot of infrastructure. DJ Williams, the quarterback's coach, like, they wanted to surround Michael Penix with as much knowledge as they could, right? And Kirk was still part of that. And his kind of from Kirk's vantage point, like, he has been great in the locker room. Like, he has been great inside of the facility. He has still been kind of the consummate teammate. So as long as that was not a negative, I think the Falcons were comfortable with that. So you go through the draft, then you get into training camp, and then the leverage starts to swing back to the organization's favor, because now, as quarterbacks are going down around the league, as you point out, like, if you're the Bengals and you are, Zach Taylor, and you're looking at kind of like what happened last year, and we got to make a playoff run here, and there is real pressure, and that does change maybe the math for some of these teams. So nothing coming from the Falcons in terms of, hey, we are actively really pushing to trade Kirk. Everything has been as it stands. They are comfortable with the situation being what it is. However, Michael Penix is still your starter, and if a team wants to move Atlanta off of their current position, I think the Falcons would be open to receiving those calls, as they have been throughout this whole time. What will it take to get them to move off of this position? I do think is changing a little bit, and the price tag might be going up, especially if a couple more quarterbacks get hurt and a bidding war could start. So that's kind of the latest. There really is kind of no news, but the occurrences or the events happening around the league, I do think you're going to start maybe seeing that impact this at some point.
Yeah, they could get an offer that knocks their socks off, right? Because
potentially.
Yeah, so that'll be an interesting storyline to keep an eye on. Will McFadden here from the Atlanta Falcons website, senior editor and writer. You mentioned Atlanta's offense has the potential to be one of the top in the National Football League, and I agree with you, because I'd love to get your opinion on Bijan Robinson, because pound for pound, I mean, like, this is the new season. Last year, Saquon had the 2K and all that, but he's not really been off to a hot start. And you look around the league, like a skilled position player. We saw CMC in action last night. He's pretty good too. But Bijan, to me, is right up there pound for pound.
Absolutely. He was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Month. Wednesday, I believe. So that was a pretty good. No, it was Thursday. My mistake. That's pretty good indicator of just the start that Bijan has gotten off to this season. Before last night's game, and Christian McCaffrey was great in that as well, particularly as a receiver. That has been kind of the strong suit for Bijan so far this year. He's already got 2 games with over 100 receiving yards. Coming into last night, he was leading all players with 584 yards from scrimmage, and he's scored 2 touchdowns. I mean, like, he is on pace, and on pace through 4 games is really only that. It's on pace through 4 games, so there's a lot of season left to go. But he is set to finish with 2,482 yards, so just shy of 2,500 total yards from scrimmage, which would be the second most in a single season in NFL history. So when you say, is he like the best player pound for pound, I would throw my hat in that ring right now, because he is everything that kind of Christian McCaffrey has been. He's just younger. He's just fresher. He doesn't have that built up kind of like scar tissue that McCaffrey has developed kind of over the years. And he is still a phenomenal player in his own right. But really, it's the thing I keep pointing out to everybody, and by this point, it's well known. It's just kind of his feel in space and his ability to kind of string together the movements in a way where he always feels spring loaded and ready to go. Like that touchdown run that he had against Washington, where he kind of shakes like 3 guys loose, then spins, then goes into the end zone. He makes a jump cut where he literally jumps to his left, lands on his left leg and never even puts his right leg on the ground, bends his knee and cuts back to the right on one leg. And then he just trucks forward and does the spin move and does the rest. So he is exceptional in kind of that way, but then he's also added the receiving element to his game. He's a really good pass protector. That was something as a rookie that was a real liability for him that he got way better at last year, and he's continued to improve this year. And the final piece is just really the explosive element to it, which he has improved this season. I do think he leads kind of all running backs with like 5 plays of 10 plus yards or 20 plus yards. I don't have that stat right off the hand, but we did see him get tackled before scoring that touchdown on the big reception against Washington. So there's still a little bit work to be done there. But by and large, like I do think he is kind of the best all-around player in the league right now. And Raheem Morris even said so last week. So, you know, he definitely agrees with me there.
Yeah, Raheem Morris, pride of West Orange, New Jersey here. We're broadcasting live from Jersey. And, you know, I'll tell you, I would take Bijan, if I had to pick one skill position player, non-quarterback in the National Football League to build around, it would be Bijan Robinson for my liking anyway. He's a joy to watch, and you talk about there's still room for improvement. That's scary for the NFL because, I mean, this guy, I mean, I think he's going to win Offensive Player of the Year. Could he compete for MVP? We shall see. But, yeah, he is just now entering his prime, I believe, and he's going to be a good one for a long time to come. All right, let's talk about some of the rookies this year because Xavier Watts is making plays. I love this Billy Bowman coming out. I thought that was a shrewd draft pick. And, of course, they had 2 first-round picks that they used. So what's the rookie report there in Atlanta?
Oh, amazing. Like it is an A, if not an A plus at this point, because the Falcons really, I think, wanted to infuse a different identity into their defense. And in fact, this is great timing for us to have this chat because on Tuesday, our editorial team just kind of released a little project from the first 4 weeks. And it's a deep dive into Jeff Ulbricht's defensive philosophy called Heart, Mind, Fist. So the 3 members of our team each took one of those words and kind of defined what it meant. And the rookies have played a huge role in just kind of this transition from last year to this year. I kind of want to start with Billy Bowman, who was the last of the 4 defensive rookies picked for Atlanta here, but you can just feel his intensity, his love for the game, which they're all kind of cliches, but when you watch him play, it kind of extends beyond the cliche. You understand why the cliche even exists in the first place, because there was a play early that Washington, it may have been on their very first possession, kind of got Deebo Samuel in motion, clear into the flats across the other side of the field, and wanted to get him the ball in space, let him turn upfield and maybe create a big play after the catch, as he does better than most in this league. And who's with him step for step across the field in motion and right there to make a play? It's Billy Bowman Jr. AJ Terrell had a very similar play, I think, his rookie year against Justin Jefferson. And it was kind of eye-opening to me. This was the exact same thing. And it was like, man, this guy is seeing things. He moves around the field well. And then he's just not afraid when he's kind of heat-seeking missile locked in to go and run through the tackle. So he has been great. He's forced a turnover so far. Xavier Watts he should have probably like 4 interceptions at this point. And if we're talking about a rookie who has 4 interceptions through 4 games, I mean, that's like leading Good Morning Football, right? Like they're going to be sitting there talking about it nonstop. And it's the ability to put himself in position to make these plays that I think has Jeff Ulbrich, Raheem Morris, and the rest of kind of Atlanta's staff really excited, because they know what they have in Jesse Bates, and they kind of feel like they have a similar player in Xavier Watts, somebody who just sees the field really well, has played in a lot of high-level football games at college, comes from Marcus Freeman's program. They teach him really well. So they feel like he is a pro's pro already in year 1. And they, I think have really high hopes for just what he can be over the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years, hopefully. And then your 2 first-round picks, right? The pass rush for Atlanta overall has really taken a step forward. It's been kind of by committee, like that last year's draft class with Rukaroro and Brandon Dorless. They didn't see a ton of snaps in year 1. So this offseason and in training camp, Raheem Morris was saying, we kind of feel like we have 2 rookie classes coming in. And you felt that. You have felt those guys make that big contribution. And we have seen James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker make some disruptive plays, even if neither of them have like 4 sacks at this point in the season. I would expect them to, continue to pile up the pressures, continue to pile up the sacks. They may not end this year, either one of the rookies with, double-digit sacks, but I think their impact has helped the group overall really increase the pressure on opposing quarterbacks. And I wouldn't be shocked if, James Pierce finishes with 6.5 sacks this season and Jalen Walker's like at 5.5 or 7, and we're looking by and large feeling really excited about what those guys can be in year 2 moving forward, because they have flashed early on.
Yeah, a lot of good, young, fresh bodies along that defensive line. And just for the record, we did have a first-round grade on Billy Bowman. So,
wow, okay.
Yeah. We love this guy coming out. I think he got dinged a little bit for his size, but man,
yeah, shorter arms, a little bit concerns in tackling, especially. But I feel like at least so far, those have proven to be a little overblown.
Yeah, he did get knocked for some missed tackles there, but he's always given full effort, always shows up around the ball. You see it, sack, interception, playmaker on the defensive side. He's a good. That might be the deepest safety room in the National Football League. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's crazy because they signed Jordan Fuller in the offseason, right? Who was a starter for the Super Bowl team in LA with Raheem Morris, and it was like, okay, he and Jesse Bates, and then you had DeMarco Hellams, a year 3 guy from Alabama, late round pick coming back off injury. It's like they like him, maybe he could develop. And then you go out and add 2 guys in the draft. All of a sudden, yeah, there's 5 safeties that you kind of like in that room. So it has got to be one of the deepest position groups in the league.
Yeah, Terry Fontenot deserves some credit for that one. We're talking to Will McFadden, winding down here. Well, how about an unsung hero on the team that we should know about? You got one for us?
Yeah, I do. I would say Divine Diablo. He has been somebody who they plugged in right next to Caden Ellis, and it kind of did 2 things. I think it allows Caden Ellis to continue to operate in that uber versatile role that we saw Zach Bond operate in last year, that Caden did as well, where he's both a pass rusher, but then, run defender. He's able to drop into coverage. Any given play, you kind of don't know what he's doing. So by putting somebody in like Divine Diablo in there, who is exceptional in coverage as a former safety, and really good at diagnosing run plays, like his nose for the football, his ability to see the flow happening in front of him and then knife in there and make a stop is really, really stands out to me. But specifically, I was talking with D. Alford, who filled in at outside corner with AJ Terrell down the last couple of games. And he said that Divine Diablo is maybe one of the best players at defending the dig route that he's ever been around, which is kind of that deep 12 to 15 yard in that is a late breaking and gives quarterbacks options over the middle of the field. His ability to sit in that zone with the length that he possesses gives the cornerbacks for Atlanta more confidence, because they feel they can play a little bit more aggressively, knowing that he's going to take away that window. So you see how just adding that one piece into the kind of the middle of Atlanta's defense allows for more optionality with their pieces around him. So I think that Divine Diablo has kind of quietly really helped this defense take a little bit of a step forward.
Yeah, he's caught my attention, and that's a credit to the coaching staff for identifying the position switch there. He looks like he bulked up a little bit. He's got a tremendous physique too, man. I remember this guy all ripped, jacked up coming out, and it's good. It's good to see him playing a key role there for Atlanta. All right, before we get you out of here, what's the outlook? They're coming off the bye week. They're going to have Buffalo next week. They're a Super Bowl contender. Can Atlanta hang in the same arena, do you think?
That's going to be a great measuring stick game, right? Because I think if we get the defense has been solid so far. So if the defense kind of continues to play the way that it has been, I like their ability to stick around in this game. To me, it is going to be on Atlanta's offense, right? I think Buffalo, I was just checking before we hopped on, they have the number 1 EPA in the league on offense right now. So I do expect this to be a points game. I think you can get up into the 30s potentially. So what kind of offensive game plan does Atlanta have? Are they able to build off of this past performance against Washington, add some new wrinkles in there? Because I do think the talent exists on Atlanta's roster to be able to go toe to toe with a team like Buffalo. There's just a lot in Buffalo's favor. You've got the confidence. You've done it before. You do have Josh Allen, who is more experienced than Michael Penix Jr., X, Y, and Z. Like, it's a great measuring stick game. At this point in time, Buffalo is Buffalo, right? So you've got to prove that you can knock off a team like that. but we have seen Atlanta rise to that occasion before. A lot of people were expecting Minnesota to kind of be the better team in that one and maybe do to Atlanta what Atlanta did to Minnesota. So I'm not going to count out this group by any means. However, they need to be locked in. They need to be ready to go because Buffalo, as you said, is a Super Bowl contender. They have been for the last few years. So if you want to be there, you got to beat this team. And I'm really excited because I do think you'll see a locked in Atlanta team. And when they're locked in, I do think this team can be as good as any in the league.
Yeah, it would be a great momentum when coming out of the bye week and maybe propel them as the season wears on. All right. Well, this was great stuff. Tell the listening audience at home, you mentioned the Jeff Albright piece over there on the website. I'm a big fan of Coach, by the way. What else you got cooking over on the Atlanta Falcons website?
Yeah. So I mentioned that Heart, Mind, Fist piece with Jeff Ulbrich. That's a great bye week read for any Falcons fans out there. Then we've also got Falcons Final Whistle is our post-game podcast, taking a break this week, as you can understand, but we're back Monday mornings. You can get us on your drive home. And then we've got the Friday 5 and Falcons Audible, which are our two kind of midweek shows on the podcast network. So if you like listening to podcasts like this one, go check those out as well. But yeah, you can find me on Twitter otherwise at Will McFadden. And yeah, you'll catch everything I'm doing there. So Rick, thank you so much for inviting me on. This was a great chance to chat with you.
Love it, man. I appreciate the time. And maybe we'll tap into you when those Falcons reach the playoffs later on in January.
from your lips, my friend.
All right, Will, man. Enjoy the football weekend and the rest of your bye week. And take care, man. We'll talk to you down the line. Appreciate the time.
Of course, buddy. Anytime.
All right, there you have Will McFadden from the Atlanta Falcons website.